Alright. So today I'm going to paint a Necromancer type dude for use in pretty much any RPG you can think of. This is a Reaper Bones figure, so just like the last one, he's made of bendy plastic, but still very high quality. I've primed him in black, then dry brushed him in white, just to help see the details as we're painting. None of this will be visible when we're done, but it's just so that while we're going, sometimes a miniature that's primed completely black can be hard to see. So, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I'm gonna start by doing the cape and these bat wings on his staff up here. So I'm gonna start with Nagaroth Knight. It's a dark purple. And I'm just going to cover the entire cloak, cape, whatever, and the bat wings on his staff. And just like the last few times we've done this, throughout this process, I'm going to pause and give you guys some stopping points. So you can decide, this is as far as I want to go. I just want to get my miniature done. I'm not as concerned with the level of detail. And there'll be, in this video, there'll be 2 stopping points that you could do. I believe. At least one. There may be a second. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. And that's just so that if you just want to get paint on your figure to play with them and you don't really care if they're more or less detailed, then we'll get to that first stopping point and you can call it a day. You're like, yep, that's all I need. So similar to the last video, we're going to do a pretty simple technique of we're just going to paint all these base layers on. Then we're going to go back and we're going to highlight with a lighter color. And then in a couple places we might use a wash or maybe a third or a second highlight, a third color on a couple places, but we'll see. And that will get us a nice look. That will work for RPG style games. I'm not sure if this would necessarily be a player character, but it could be an enemy or a dungeon master or something like that. I'm sure there are some RPGs though where you could play as a necromancer. I'm not very familiar with D&D myself, but I'm sure you could get a necromancer in there somehow, even if you can't actually play as one. But also, I should mention, before I get too much farther, having my roof replaced currently. So if you hear bangs or crashes or things like that, that's what it is. I don't know how much you'll be able to hear it on camera, but if you do hear it, don't be alarmed. Or do be alarmed, but also know it's just the roof being replaced. Alright, so we're almost done covering this cloak here. This kind of gets raggedy down here at the bottom. Just going to be careful to get all of the bits of it. And make sure to get that. And then we're going to get his hood also. I think his hood is part of that. Part of his cloak here. And then as soon as I finish this, we're going to go on to the bat wings on his cape. I think those would look good in a purple color, so we're going to do that. Alright, there's that done. Then I'm just going to do these wings really quickly. Just make sure you get all the sides of this. I'm going to do the back part of this also. There's a skull in the front that will be painted skull colored later, but the back of it can be this purple color. Alrighty. Just gonna get the underside of that right there. Alright, good. So that's the main cloak color done. Now I think I will move on to the skulls. Actually, I think I'll do the leather next. So I'm going to start with a base coat of dryad bark on the leather. And there's a bunch of spots to get on this guy that's leather, so I'm going to get his boots first. And I am being careful to not get paint on other parts of the miniature, but because we're using all layer paint for this, we're not using any transparent paint like contrast paint, you don't have to be super careful because we are going to come back and paint it. But I always like to be careful just as good practice. Sometimes, and often, it does matter that you be careful when you're putting colors on a miniature, so why not practice being careful at all times? Just as a good habit. Alright, there's his boots. Gonna do his... Is he wearing gloves? Yes, he is wearing gloves. Sometimes it's hard to tell if a model is wearing gloves or just has, like, wrist decoration. But in this case, he is definitely wearing gloves. So I will go ahead and paint the gloves. Okay. And his other glove. Is he wearing another glove? He's only got one glove. His other glove is, or his other hand is just a hand with a metal, like what I was talking about earlier, wrist decoration. So, not quite done with the leather. I closed the leather paint, but we're not done with it. There's a couple more things to do. I'm going to get his belt and his little pouch things here. I think this is his scabbard on this side, so I'll do that also. Would make sense that it's leather. And it's sticking out right down here. Make sure to cover that part also. And then I'll get this thing. And then his belt. Okay. And then he's got, I think these are part of his torso clothes, his shirt, I guess. So we'll leave that. I'm going to do the wrapping on the staff in this color also. The rest of the staff will be, I think, silver probably, but this wrapping, it will be in this leather. Alright, so then the leather, I believe, is done. He does have this funny mask on. And now that I look at it, I think I'm going to do it in leather. I think a leather mask on his head would look cool. Kind of like Man in the Iron Mask type of thing, but mask made of leather instead of iron, obviously. Alright, that's looking good there. I think next I'm going to do the base coat on his skin, just so I can see all his skin. So I'm going to use Cadian Flesh Tone for that. Just so I can mark basically where all his skin is, so I don't accidentally paint some of it later. And then I'm going to go back and do the last couple bits of leather, because there are some leather straps that go across his leg. So I want to paint this first, so I don't have to struggle to not cover the leather paint afterward. So right here is what I'm talking about. There's two leather straps right there, so I'm going to paint the flesh tone in first. And then after the flesh tone dries, I'll come back and put the leather in. And you could do it the other way. You could paint the leather straps and then paint the flesh tone in between them and around them. I just think it's easier to do it this way, though. So there's his legs. There's no skin showing on his face. He does have skin showing here, though. And this is an example on a model where you could paint this as skin, as I am, or you could paint it as he's just wearing skin-tight clothes. That's entirely possible. And it could be that way. So it's up to you. If you paint this miniature, you could do it either way. I haven't looked at the... as I said at the beginning, this is a Reaper Bones figure, and they have painted pictures of all their miniatures on their website. I haven't looked at that, though, so I don't know which way they decided to go with it. In my opinion, it looks like skin. But you never know. He is a necromancer. Who knows what kind of weird stuff he's been up to. Alright. Just paint the fingers here. Purposely leaving the black in between the fingers because it'll give us definition without us even having to try. And then the other side of his arm. Just like this. Alrighty. Just didn't cover that well right here, right there. Alright, so that's his skin done. So now I'll go back and do those last couple leather straps I was talking about. So I'll go back to the Dryad bark for this. And he's got one here. He's got one here. He's got two on his leg here. Right there and right here. Alright, that'll work. Let me just make sure the straps don't continue onto the other side, and they do not. Alright, so that's the leather finished, or base coated, not completely finished. Then I think I will do the silver now. So I'm going to start with Iron Warriors. It's a very dark silver. So it's a good color for base coating silver. You can always come back and highlight it afterward. So I'm going to do his sword here. Flip around, do the other side. Make sure to get the side of the sword. On these soft plastic miniatures, the details can be kind of soft, so the edges of the swords are not super well defined. So you do need to make sure to paint them. Everything on his staff that isn't that skull or that we already painted purple is going to be this metal color. Oh, or the leather wrapping, obviously. Just be careful when you're painting around that. There we go. And then the bottom of the staff down here. Just like that. All right. What else is silver on him? Just take a quick look here. Oh, this bracelet he's got on here. That can be silver. Then to me, it looks like he has a metal plate on the back of his glove right here. So I'm just going to paint that in silver. And I think I'll do his shoulder pad things here as if they were made of metal. Just like that. And we can leave the underside black. It'll just act as shadow for us. Okay, so that's the silver base coated. I think I'll move on to the skulls now. So I'm going to start with a base coat of Wraithbone for the skulls. And there's a bunch of skulls down here, so I'm just gonna paint the tops of these skulls. Basically, we'll use the black that's already on the miniature as a little bit of shade. So we want to paint almost the entire skull, but just leave a little bit showing in the eyes and around each skull. Not too much though. That'll work. Do this last skull there. He's standing on a whole mess load of skulls, so just make sure you get all of them. And these back here. Alright, there's those skulls. Then he's got a little skull here on his belt. Just completely cover that. There we go. And then he's got a skull here on his staff. And then he has a skull here, but I'm not going to do that in this skull color. I've got a different plan for that one. So there's that done. Yep. Alrighty. Then I will move on to the tunic, I guess. For that, I'm going to start with Corvus Black. Sort of a medium black moving towards dark gray. So I'm going to do all of this in this color. And then I'm going to do all of this in this color. Okay. That. He's got a little bit of it peeking through up here. We'll just make sure to get that. Otherwise, that's all for that color. We are closing in quickly on the first stopping point of this miniature, if you just wanted to be done with him. Last thing we're going to do before the first stopping point is some corn red. We're going to paint the symbol on his chest in this color. So I'm not waiting for the black to dry in this case, because I don't mind if it mixes just a little bit. So I'm going to paint the skull on his chest in this color. And I'm going to paint the ribs of his armor in this color. Just very carefully go down each rib, just like that. And then he's got these like wings sort of things coming out of this skull. And I'm just going to paint those in this red also. Just like that. Alright, so then really the only thing left to do for the first stopping point would just be to put a color on the base. And for just putting a color on the base, I'll do that real quick. I'm going to use Scrag Brown. It's a nice orange color. It'll go well with the colors we already have on the miniature. So I'm just going to quickly coat the base with this, and then that'll be the first stopping point, and then we'll move on to continuing the paint job if you want to. So I'm just going to completely cover the base with this color. Just being careful to go around the skulls. If a little bit gets up on the skulls, though, it's not a big deal, as I'm sure dirt would be kicked up and stuff onto them. make sure you cover your base completely. If you wanted, you could paint the entire base rim with this color also. I'm not personally a fan of that. I'll go back and paint the base rim black after I'm done. But besides that, this figure is now at a stopping point that you could take him and call it a day. Put him on the D&D table and no problem at all. He's ready to go. But you can also take it a step further. So we're going to move on to that further step right now. We're going to start with the purple again, and we're going to do some highlights. First highlight, I'm going to do Zurius purple. Maybe? I think they should have called this purple Xerxes purple. That's how I used to pronounce it before I actually read the letters. I think that would be a great name for this. But, in any event, it's not that, but we are going to use it. And I'm just going to go along the edges of the cloak here in a couple places. Get down there and down here. This cloak has a ton of edges on it with all these folds and stuff. So we're just gonna cheat it basically. Just gonna take our brush and just go down like this. Like that. And then same thing over here. Get the edge there, and then just go down like this. I'm going to do the edges of the bat wings here. Right in there and in there. And here, up here. Don't have to be super precise with it just to get a second color on everything. That'll really help. Do some same thing with the edges on the back of this side of the cape. Just come down like this. That'll do. Then we'll flip it over. We'll do the same thing on the bat wings. Just like this. Again, does not have to be super precise. Just so there are two colors on it. And then we'll come down like this. Like this. Just sort of following the folds of the cape. Get the edges all down here and all this torn up area. Want to really make sure to highlight that down there. Just like this. Just give it a ragged look. And then we'll do the same thing we did on the front. Just sort of follow the shape of the cape as it goes down the back. Do a little swirl on those. And down like this. Like this. Just make sure you're following, no matter what figure you're painting, following the lines of the cloth that you're following. There you go. That's a highlighted cape. It doesn't look perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it has two colors on it, so that will help when whoever looks at it, it will look much more visually interesting than just the one color. So that's the purple highlighted. So now we're going to move on to the silver, I think. For the silver highlight, I'm going to do Ironbreaker. And I'm just going to do sort of the same thing I just did with the purple. Just going to touch some spots. So on the staff, for instance, there's some separations on the staff here. So I'll do a line on this one. And then little sideways swishes on that one. And then a line here. Sideways, line, line. And then up here, let's see. So we'll do a line going down each spike. A dot in the middle. And then a swoosh, sort of semicircle on that part. On here, we'll do a line down the handle there. And lines across here. And then maybe just follow this shape like that. Really, when you're highlighting quickly like this, you just want to figure out what the basic geometric shape of your item is and follow the lines of that. So, for instance, that's a line. So you just, you put a line across it. There's a triangle right here, so you just follow the triangle. Done. This is sort of a rectangle with a triangle on top, so you just come down, follow that line, come down, follow that line, and there it's highlighted. And back here, these are triangles. We're just going to come straight down the middle because it would be detrimental to try to highlight the edges of those triangles. You absolutely could. I'm just not going to put that effort in right now. And on the shoulder pads, just follow the edges here. Just like this. Perfect. And that is the silver highlighted. So then I'll move to the leather, I think. For the leather highlight, I'm going to use, if I can find the camera, Gorthor Brown. Let's give it a shake. I'm going to find my other Gorthor Brown, because this one is dead as a doorknob. There we go. And we're just going to get the leather pieces and follow the edges again. So on the boots, there's an edge going around there. There's one coming down here. And there's the bottom of the fold. Then there's some creases here. And there's the toe line. That boot's done. Same thing here. Top of the fold. Bottom of the fold. Crease. Crease. And toe line. We have the scabbard here. Just follow the scabbard's lines around. Top of the scabbard. Side of the scabbard. And then the belt. Just follow the belt around in a couple places. Just like that. Then we have this pouch here. I'll highlight the fold of the pouch. And then the sides of the main body of the pouch. Just like that. Perfect. Then we'll do the fingers, just very lightly on the fingers, just to show some wear. Then there's some lines in the glove. We'll do those, just like that. Same thing on this side. Follow the lines, follow the fingers. And then I'm going to turn him sideways, and I'm just going to flick my brush along the lines on his staff, just like this. Like that. And then it's just his face left, his leather mask that we put on him. So I'm going to be very careful in this instance. I'm going to highlight along the top of each eye hole here. Then do the bottom. Then do the nose. And then do the bottom of the mask. The mask's a little raggedy over here, so I'm just going to dot in a couple bits right there. And then there's a line coming down here. I'm just going to do that. And there's his face highlighted. And that is the leather highlighted, I believe. Yes. All right. So then we'll move on to the skin. And for that, I'm going to use Kislev Flesh. At least I think I'm going to use Kislev Flesh. This one's pretty dried out. But let's see if I can rescue it. That's good enough. Alright, so we're just going to use it just like we just did the lighter brown. Just going to touch it on a couple of the muscles here. The raised areas of his skin. Knees. Muscle over here. Same thing on the other leg. Just like that. And then the other arm. And then I'll do the fingers, just like I did the fingers on the glove. Same exact way. And of course with our flesh tone highlight now. And then a little bit of purple on there, so I'll just cover that up with a highlight. And that'll be the skin highlighted. So then, what do we have left? Oh, we have the black left. I'll highlight the black with some Mechanicus Standard Gray. Just go exactly how we have been doing. I'm going to go along the lines of this tunic here. Just like that. And then the triangles here. Maybe put one there. And then go along the bottom. That looks good to me. And then we'll do some highlights on this part here. Just kind of wherever there happens to be a raised edge, I'll put a little line on. That looks good. And then we're also going to highlight this thing that curls around his staff here. Just give that a little bit of gray. Let's see if it comes on this side. Nope, that looks good. Oh, it does actually right here. Cool. All right, so that is the black highlighted. And then I believe, yep, we are at another stopping point. So this is basically every color with another highlight on it, or with a highlight on it. So if you wanted to, you could be done right now. Second stopping point. You could maybe dab another color onto the base to just mix it up a little bit. But then you'd be done. So I'm going to take it one step further, though, because I still have some time left, I think. Oh, yeah, plenty of time. So I'm going to highlight even smaller this time. I'm going to use some Mephiston Red. And I'm going to highlight the skull and red parts of his chest here. So this isn't technically a second layer of highlight on this color, but it's so small that I'm going to count it as one of the parts of the third step, not the first step. So I'm just going to do some spot highlights on this. Just like that. All right. And then the same thing with the skulls. They weren't actually highlighted before, but because they're so small, I'm counting it in this third section. So I'm going to use some vampiric highlight rather, sorry. And I'm just going to spot highlight the skulls again. So just kind of right there, right here, just to change their color a little bit. Won't do tons, but it'll just make them a little more vibrant. And then do these skulls back here. Okay. And then, before we get to the base, I'm going to use some Genestealer Purple. And I'm just going to do some very small highlights on the cloak. So, for instance, I'm going to take this ridge of the cloak right here, and I'm just going to do a very small line like that. And then another one down here, not covering up all of the second color we put on, but just changing some of the tone of it a little bit. I'm going to do some there, right there, maybe on the rips in the cloak, and then the very tips of this down here. Like that. That looks good. And then I'm just going to do it on the very points of the bat wings here. So right like this. And then flip it around. And do the same thing. Then down here on this raggedy bit, just kind of tap a bunch of it in there. And there's a couple holes in the cloak up here, so we'll do a couple spots like that. And like this. And then just on this part right here. And up here. And then along this edge. Alrighty. And there's that second layer of purple highlight added. And I don't really see anything else that I want to add a second layer of highlight to right this second. So I think I'm just going to move on to the base now. And I think this guy, he looks like he lives in a swamp, sort of. So I'm going to take some of my tufts. Just going to decide, he probably Necromancer, he likes death, so maybe the grass is a little bit dead around him. So we probably don't want anything green. So maybe a combination of these three will give us a good decaying, dying look. So I'm just going to take these tufts. These are just little static grass tufts that you can get. And I'm just gonna use an assortment of all three. So maybe I'll take this like sort of dying green, dark green color. I'll just grab one with some tweezers here. Just like this. I'll put a little dab of glue on this one. Just a little dab of, maybe a little dab of glue. I'd like to have a little dab of glue. My glue thing is clogged. Just gonna grab a knife real quick and unclog it. Can happen sometimes with super glue. Not the end of the world. Just unclog it, make sure it is unclogged. Discover that it still isn't. Fantastic. Somewhere in here is working glue. I know it. Okay, fine. Well, can't get the super glue unclogged right this second. That's okay though. These tufts are self-adhesive, so I just put a little bit of super glue down just to add to the stickiness, but they absolutely are self-adhesive, as you can see. Stuck on there quite nicely. I can't just scrape it off. So then I'll just alternate around my 3 sets of tufts here. Just sort of sticking them in random places, making sure they're nice and fluffed out. Grab one of these lighter colored ones, maybe up here. And maybe another one of these back here. Just making sure it's stamped down. Another one of these greener ones, maybe up here. There we go. And this is really just about, I like to pick 3 colors when I do it this way, and 3 colors of tuft, that is, and you just kind of alternate them around, varying the size and the shape of them until you get what looks like a good varied grass look. You don't have to cover all the paint on the base. You can leave some of it hanging, or leave some of it exposed, obviously. Just make sure this grass is on the right way for us. Make sure that's stamped down. And then maybe one more little one. Do one more little one right here. There we go. Alright, so then we have some grass all over the base. That looks pretty good. Then we're going to take some Agrax Earthshade. This is a wash. It's a dark brown color. And we're just going to put it kind of in and around our tufts that we just laid down. So I'm just going to get it here on the base. And if it gets on the grass a little bit, it's not a big deal. It'll just look like maybe they've got some dirty water in them, or some dirt got kicked up onto them, or whatever. And I'm just going to put a little bit of this in and around the skulls also, just to give them some dirt on them maybe. I'm just going to add this kind of all over the base. A little too much paint on the brush there. Just all over like this. In there. Alright, and then we'll call that done, basically. The only thing left to do is to paint the base rim. And I guess I can do that really quick right here. I still have some time left over. So for that, I like to do my base rims in Abaddon Black. So I just popped him off the holder we were using, and he's dry now. The actual model is dry up here. So I'm just going to grab him like this, and I'm just going to paint the base rim, covering up all that orange color that we got on it earlier. And for D&D miniatures and stuff, it's not a huge deal for them all to look the same necessarily. If you're painting like an army for a war game, you'd want all your base rims to be the same color. But D&D, because you're usually only in control of 1 or maybe 2 miniatures, like if you summon something maybe, you really have a lot more freedom with what you can do with a base rim. So I've seen some people do, like, if their character is a wizard, they do like a sort of swirly spell effect on the base rim. That's pretty cool. So you could do something like that. But then otherwise otherwise I throw him on the ground. Otherwise he is done. So we did the base rim, plus 3 levels of highlights in some places, only 2 in others. But like I said, you could stop at either of the stopping points that we had earlier, or you could go all out and do something like this. So that's it for this one. I will be back on this channel next week, painting something else. I'm hopefully going to be painting a dragon someday. I've got to get my hands on a dragon, and I'm going to paint a dragon on stream. Otherwise, I'll be in the 40K group on Friday, same time, doing some Warhammer stuff. And thank you everybody for watching, and I will see you next time.